You are being watched right now. Not by me, not by the government.
Well, maybe by the government, but I am talking about something deeper.
Something that has been haunting humanity for thousands of years.
A place where nobody judges you, nobody interrupts you, and nobody asks where you put the scissors.
We take this for granted today. We have bedrooms, we have bathrooms with locks.
We have noise-canceling headphones and do not disturb modes. We have the sacred ritual of pretending we are not home when someone rings the doorbell. But here is the question that should have been keeping you up at night.
What happened before any of that existed? What happened when you lived in a cave with 30 other people? All of you sleeping on the same floor, sharing the same fire, breathing the same air.
And you just needed 5 minutes to yourself. This is the story of privacy before privacy existed.
And trust me, it gets weird. Let's start at the very beginning, the beginning of us.
Homo sapiens, the species that apparently looked at their surroundings and thought, yes, but what if I could be alone for a bit?
For most of human prehistory, roughly 200,000 to 10,000 years ago, our ancestors lived as hunter-gatherers.
All of you sleeping on the same floor, sharing the same fire, breathing the same air.
And apparently zero personal space. Think about what that actually means for a second.
You wake up in the morning surrounded by people. You eat surrounded by people.
For your entire life, there was no concept of going home. There was no apartment to retreat to.
Your life was, by definition, a communal experience, from the moment you were born to the moment you died.
And archaeologists studying these groups have found something fascinating. They almost never find evidence of individual sleeping quarters.
No separated rooms, no partitioned spaces within shelters, just one big shared area where everyone piled in together.
So here is the real question. Did these people even want privacy? Or is privacy something we invented later?
Like taxes and passive-aggressive emails. Here is where it gets philosophically interesting.
Some anthropologists argue that privacy as a concept is not natural to humans at all.
That it is a byproduct of civilization, hierarchy, and the accumulation of property.
That before we had things to hide, before we had social status to protect, before we had secrets worth keeping, we simply didn't need to be alone. There is actually pretty compelling evidence for this. Many contemporary hunter-gatherer societies that still exist today.
Groups in the Amazon, parts of Central Africa, remote corners of Papua New Guinea have been studied extensively. By utilizing the telescope, the scientists can observe the distant population's behavior in detail.
The Pirahã people of the Brazilian Amazon, for instance, traditionally sleep in close groups,
Conduct almost every activity in communal spaces, and do not have a cultural framework for the idea that some information or behavior should be concealed from the group.
So here is the real question. Did these people even want privacy? Or is privacy something we invented later? Now, before you start romanticizing this as some kind of pure, liberated existence, stop. Because the flip side of this is that everything you do is subject to communal judgment, commentary, and unsolicited opinion.
You sneeze wrong and everyone has thoughts about it. You are in a bad mood and there is nowhere, literally nowhere on earth you can go to just be in a bad mood by yourself. But wait, because even in these early societies, privacy wasn't entirely absent. It just looked completely different from what we know.
For your entire life, there was no concept of going home. There was no apartment to retreat to. Early humans developed something that anthropologists call civil inattention. It is the social agreement
To not comment. To pretend you didn't see or hear something, even when you clearly did. You see this even today. Two strangers in an elevator, a couple having a quiet argument in a restaurant, someone crying on the subway.
The entire social contract of urban life is built on this invisible agreement. I will act as if I cannot see what I can clearly see.
and you will return the favor. This was the original privacy, not a room, not a wall, a collective decision to mind your own business.
And it worked, mostly. Because in small hunter-gatherer groups where survival depended on cooperation and social harmony, prying, gossiping maliciously, forcing confrontation was genuinely dangerous. You could destabilize the group. You see this even today. Two strangers in an elevator, a couple having a quiet argument in a restaurant, someone crying on the subway.
So ancient humans had privacy. It just lived in other people's eyes, not in architecture.
Then agriculture happened, and everything got complicated. About 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, humans in various parts of the world
independently started growing their own food. They stopped moving. They built permanent settlements. And suddenly, for the first time in human history, you had something worth protecting. Your grain stores, your livestock, your land.
control over your information, your possessions, your body, your decisions. And you can't have control if everyone can walk into your life whenever they want.
This is when walls became more than just shelter. This is when the architecture of privacy was born. Archaeological sites from the earliest agricultural settlements, places like Çatalhöyük in modern-day Turkey, dating back around 9,000 years,
reveal something remarkable about how people started organizing their lives. These settlements were densely packed, and houses built wall to wall, almost no streets, people literally entering their homes through holes in the roof.
And yet inside these structures, you start to see something new. Distinct areas, sleeping platforms raised off the ground,
Specific zones for cooking, for sleeping, for storage. The interior of the home becoming a structured, intentional space. Rather than just a place to be out of the rain, people were starting to organize their private lives architecturally. Prying, gossiping maliciously, forcing confrontation was genuinely dangerous. You could destabilize the group. But here is something archaeology rarely puts a spotlight on: children. In these early agricultural settlements,
and the interesting thing is, nobody thought that was unusual. Children slept in the same room as parents and siblings.
they witnessed the full spectrum of adult life from birth. Arguments, grief, illness, intimacy, all of it. This is not neglect. This is not dysfunction. This is just what life looked like when walls were a recent invention.
And space was a premium resource. But what's fascinating is that children in these societies develop their private lives differently as a result.
Rather than a physical space, they used time. The hours spent alone, foraging, tending animals, carrying water. These solitary tasks gave children a form of privacy that the architecture of the home couldn't provide. Movement was freedom. The errand that sent you out of the settlement, even briefly, was a doorway into your own mind. Even today, in communities without the luxury of private rooms, children instinctively find their private spaces in time and motion rather than walls.
They climb a tree nobody else climbs. They find a specific rock by a river.
They carve a tiny empire out of the landscape that belongs psychologically entirely to them. The human need for private space does not disappear just because no one builds it for you. It finds another shape.
Now let's address the thing everyone is thinking about and nobody ever wants to say out loud. Toilets.
Or more specifically, the ancient lack thereof. Because if you want to understand ancient privacy, you have to understand that for most of human history,
Bodily functions were not private at all. And this is not a small footnote in history. This is central to the entire story.
In prehistoric societies, elimination happened wherever and whenever nature required it. Communal or solo, there was
No etiquette, no door, no awkward small talk while waiting for someone to finish in the bathroom.
The errand that sent you out of the settlement, even briefly, was a doorway into your own mind.
the Romans, whose empire produced aqueducts, roads, concrete, and some genuinely impressive legal philosophy,
Had public latrines called foracae that were essentially long stone benches with holes carved out, set over a running water channel.
You sat side by side with strangers, you made conversation. There are actual ancient graffiti and literary references suggesting that people ran into acquaintances,
Had business meetings, and exchanged gossip at the latrines. The Romans were not embarrassed by this. They were in fact somewhat proud of their sanitation infrastructure, which, compared to what came before and what would come after the fall of Rome, they absolutely had a right to be. The wealthy, of course, found ways around the communal bathroom problem,
as the wealthy have always done throughout all of history, in every conceivable domain. Private chamber pots, servants to deal with the aftermath, and separate toilet chambers within larger villas.
Money has always bought privacy. That relationship is ancient.
Speaking of the wealthy, let's talk about ancient Egypt, because Egypt is where the architecture of private life becomes genuinely fascinating.
They absolutely had a right to be. The wealthy, of course, found ways around the communal bathroom problem.
Privacy was again largely behavioral. The concept of personal space existed, but the physical space to enact it did not.
But in elite households, nobles, priests, high officials, we see something remarkable emerge.
Multi-room villas with dedicated bedroom chambers, reception halls separate from private family areas.
Even evidence of what we might call backstage spaces, areas of the home closed to visitors and guests.
This is enormously significant because it means that by roughly 3000 BCE, some humans had not only developed a concept of private life,
but had built entire architectural systems to enforce it.
You, as a visitor to an Egyptian noble's home, would be received in specific public rooms. You would never see the family's private quarters.
You would never enter the areas reserved for intimate life. Sound familiar? Because this is still exactly how privacy works in formal social contexts today.
But here is what's really interesting about ancient Egyptian concepts of privacy. They extended it to the afterlife.